in the weeks leading up to the trade, how much discussion internally was about just, trading Luka for another player who, up to that point, had missed a lot more time in his career effectively, like trading a guy for a player who, I guess, was more injury prone. How much did you guys discuss that or think about that?
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, that's my same sentiment. That you talk about like defense as being like a focal point of what you wanted to do, and AD being a big component of that. But then you brought in a guy who at that level in his career was just not injury prone. So how do you build around an individual that has rocky ground at that point? And this is the perfect example of it because now the whole team suffered. I'm not a Mavs fan, but I just find that fascinating.
When you trade a guy of Luka's caliber, you're not taking it lightly. So we discussed everything, but we really feel that defense is our calling card and what we're going to hang our hat on. And when he had an opportunity.
So yeah, look, he says it again here about defense being like a huge point for them, but I just don't get the whole scenario.
Opportunity to get one of the best two-way players in the league, we jumped at that opportunity.
Over here, Isaac from Locked On Mavs. When
I'm sorry.
no, my bad. When Luka comes back to town, the Lakers game's happening, and you're standing there, and there's thousands of people chanting for you to be fired. That's an experience that none of us, no one's chanting for for us to lose our jobs. Why shouldn't you be fired?
Oh shit. Shit.
Well, one, I think I've done a really good job here, and I don't think I can be judged by the injuries this year.
Damn, that's like a really hard question to answer, right? Why shouldn't you be fired?
You have to judge from totality, from beginning to end. And so I think I have a really good working relationship with Patrick. I think you add in Rick. The leadership that we have is really elite. And you'll see next year when our team comes back, we're going to be competing.
You know what's crazy is they lost Jason Kidd too. Sounds like an extra element to that, right? They parted ways with Jason. They have their star guy. He's not healthy right now. And then to get asked, like, why, like, with everything that's happened in this year, why should you stay on?
Competing for a championship.
Nico, you say repeatedly over to your left, you say repeatedly the defense wins championships. Are you saying it was impossible to build a roster that included Luka Doncic that was strong enough defensively to win a championship?
That was my argument there. That their conversations were that Luka was a liability defensively, and that they had an opportunity to bring a player that could two-way defensively and offensively. But my argument for that is some of the greatest players in the NBA struggled with giving the ball up and or defense, right? And the way they've crafted teams around great players like that to create and foster teamwork and just systems so that way they can produce at a high level, knowing what your star player is and how to build it around that person, shows me that they really, really, really didn't have the quote-unquote defensive first argument down packed.
No, I think it's really doubling down on defense.
Oh, fuck.
And, like I said, when we had the opportunity to get Anthony Davis, who is one of the best two-way players in the league, we jumped at that opportunity.
Hi, Nico. Joey Mastretta with Clutch Points. Going off that question, you've made it very clear defense wins championships, and that's a very respectable mentality, old basketball saying. Well, looking at Luka Doncic, he did get this team to the NBA Finals last year. When you look at Luka Doncic, do you consider him a championship-level player?
Come on, we have places to go and kingdoms to save.
that's kind of an unfair question. Luka's no longer on this team, but what I am excited about is
No. It's not an unfair question. It's not an unfair question because if you got rid of him, one of the things that you probably stated to yourself was we can still be championship bound without him. So by eliminating that he is a component that is not necessary for us to get to the championship. So by saying it's like that's irrelevant because he's no longer on the team, that's kind of bullshit because you had to have at some point said he's not the only component or he is not the component to get us to championships. AD, Kyrie, and defense will get us there.
I do believe we have a championship caliber team, and we'll show that next year.
Mike Curtis, Dallas Morning News. Piggybacking off that a little bit, you mentioned last week that Dirk is no longer around the franchise. Obviously, Luka isn't a part of the franchise anymore, and they're two figures that mean a lot to this organization and the fan base. Obviously, it's severed right now.
Yo, that's that, right? Because they mentioned Dirk and they mention Luka, right? And how important they are to fans, right? It is true. The fans in Dallas, they're fucking tight. And they're really, really upset at the organization as a whole. I think that they've had one of the most loyal and very deep-hearted, like, fan bases in all of the NBA. So to see them so scorned by the removal of players because like, you created like, foundational love for these guys with Dirk, and then you had a player that mimicked kind of the style, and they fell in love with him, and you just kind of ripped that away.
Now, just with everything that's happened, like I guess how do you repair the relationship with the fan base going forward?
Well, one, you mentioned Dirk, and so it's important to say like he's the single most important figure to the franchise. So that's extremely important. I believe winning will help repair the relationship with the fans, and that's what we plan to do next year.
Coño, man, he looks like a shell of himself right now.
Repair it, but have you ever thought about what if it doesn't?
I'm an optimistic person, and I move by faith, not by fear.
Nico, Joe Trahan from WFAA. You said earlier you don't like to run from the media, but Nico, I am interested in your reasoning by having that roundtable discussion without any cameras or audio equipment, and then less than a week later having this meeting that we're in right now. What's your thought process behind doing it that way if you say you don't want to run from the media?
Yeah, no, it was a good question. It was a collective thought process. It was meant to be more of like a roundtable discussion. Clearly, it didn't have the goal that we intended on doing it, so that's why we're coming back here today. The goal was that I answered all the questions today. I could talk about the team as it currently is and then what we do going forward. But because it fell flat today, that I'm answering the same questions I answered last week because we didn't do a good enough job. The other part that we really wanted to show is the face of the leadership of the Mavericks going forward, which is Rick and I. And so those were the two goals.
Is part of the reason you're doing this today because you felt the fan base needed more and there wasn't an adequate response to why you made the deal? Is that why we're sitting here today?
No, it was, well, one, we do this every year. We do exit interviews. It's no different than what we've done in previous years. But because we haven't adequately answered the questions, we figured we would open it up as well right now.
Hey, Nico, will Anthony Davis need surgery this summer?
Coño.
No, he won't. He finished the season fine. He feels good about where he's at, and he'll continue to build and get healthy.
Will Derek Lively need surgery this summer?
I don't believe he will either.
And, you said defense win championships. We saw the Nuggets 2 years ago. I mean, they finished 15th in defense the regular season. Is kind of the one of the 30 guys who runs an NBA.
They fucking, oh, my God. They finished 15th in the season in defense?
Team. What's just your analysis of how, I guess, that Nuggets team won the championship?
I I don't want to dismiss your question, but I'm not concerned about the Nuggets. I feel like we have a championship caliber team when we're whole, and we're going to hang our hat on defense. We're going to be one of the best defensive teams in the league, and I think that's going to be our calling card.
Nico, right here. Mac Engel, Footwear Star Telegram. When you were kicking the idea of this trade around, and you had various scenarios planned in your head, did the anger and outrage from the fan base, has that exceeded what you were kind of planning for?
When I'm going to pitch that day, my arrival outfit has to make a statement. It's a mindset.
Yeah, good question. I did know that Luka was important to the fan base. I didn't quite know it to what level to the
Various scenarios planned in your head. Did the anger and outrage
in the league, and I think that's going to be our calling card.
Nico, right here. Mac Engel, Footwear Star Telegram. When you were kicking the idea of this trade around, and you had various scenarios planned in your head, did the anger and outrage from the fan base, has that exceeded what you were kind of planning for?
Yeah, good question. I did know that Luka was important to the fan base. I didn't quite know it to what level, but really the way we looked at it is.
That kind of sounds like bullshit, right? Am I wrong? You didn't know what level of importance Luka had to the Mavericks organization. So when you traded him, you couldn't foresee the level of impact it would have on your fans and your audience.
You know, if you're putting a team on the floor that's Kyrie, Clay, PJ, Anthony Davis, and Lively, we feel that's a championship caliber team, and we would have been winning at a high level, and that would have quieted some of the outrage.
So your thought process was to produce wins without Luka, and that would take the fan base away from their love of Luka. Nico, you said some things today that I've been questioning. From a sports understanding, you're labeled to create a team that was defense focused first, and you got asked a question regarding Luka as, do you see being a championship caliber player, which that player helped you get to the finals the year prior. You removed that player to create a team that was more defense focused first, so you could win championships. But you didn't expect the level of backlash you would get from removing that player and bringing in and redirecting the way your team worked more defensively. This just kind of seems like crazy. Like, I'm not mad that you're explaining. I was not mad at all, but I'm not mad that you're explaining yourself for what you did and using defense and defense-centric as a way to explain, like, hey, this was the mindset we had and the picture that we wanted to put on the floor, and it didn't happen. But there has to be, like, some sort of cost analysis that you guys could have done and said, what does a team look like without Luka? And that's what you couldn't really explain outside of it looked like defense-centric. It looked like the most defensive-oriented team. I think what you wanted to create was the Pistons from back in the day. Aggressive, defense-oriented, smash-mouth basketball. And you just fumbled the ball on that. They asked you why you shouldn't be fired. And I think if you created an environment that you have right now, I don't know how you answer that question.
And so unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. So it just continued to, go on and on.
Spiral out of control.
There have been a million theories about why you did the deal. One of them was that you were told to do it, that Mr. Dumont said, I didn't want to give the Supermax contract, which is obviously very expensive, to Luka. Were you told that you had to trade him?
No, not at all. Patrick reminds me of the leadership that I had at Nike, and a really good leader doesn't tell the people that work for them what to do. It's a collective, well thought out process to make a big move like that. And then also, unfortunately, I'm super stubborn, so someone telling me to do something doesn't work too well for me.
That seems
Nico
like
over here.
categorical.
Speaking of Patrick, has this
practice.
impacted your relationship with him at all since making the deal? Has this frayed
Fuck
your
yeah.
relationship working with him?
Fuck yeah.
It
He doesn't
actually
talk to you.
strengthened it because we talk a
Oh,
lot
shut
more,
the fuck up.
And we're
Shut the fuck
we're
up.
kinda
There's no
linked
way you
together to this,
strengthen
you
a
know.
relationship
And so
by
it's made
getting
us-
rid of your
it's made
fucking
us have
best
to have a lot
player,
more
bro.
Conversation. So I believe that we have a really good working relationship.
Fuck
He's
that.
Came out publicly and supported me.
No,
And
he
so
hasn't.
I don't take that lightly, and